Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the Fatherhood Authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to another impactful episode of I Am Dad Podcast. Today we are honored to have with us Dwayne E. Meeks, a transformative leader in the fatherhood advocacy and community engagement space. As the manager of the Colorado Fatherhood Network and founder of Urban Colors Arts and Mentoring, Dwayne has spent over 25 years empowering fathers, men, boys, and their families by bringing gaps and inspirational, meaningful change. Dwayne's work has touched countless lives throughout his keynotes, workshops, and trainings, equipping organizations and communities with the tools to better engage and support fathers. He is also a co-author of Pieces Never Missing Required in a Child's Life, a powerful exploration of parenting, education, and fatherhood engagement. As a dedicated father of 6 and a father figure to many, Dwayne brings personal passion and professional expertise to his mission. Today, we dive into Dwayne's journey, his innovative work with the Colorado Fatherhood Network, and his vision for a world where fathers are empowered to lead and thrive. Please join me as I bring in today our guest, Mr. Dwayne Meeks. How you doing, sir?
Good morning, Kenneth. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me here this morning.
Nah, thanks for being here. I know we've been trying to get this on the books for a while, so I'm glad we finally got it. I have always been inspired for your work and men follow. When I just said, and I read this earlier this week about the work that you were doing with oh my goodness, why is the name Urban Colors?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I've been following this cat for like 15, 20 years.
Wow. Hey, it's good to be seen.
And so sometimes a name will bring back, and I think during those earlier days you weren't with Colorado Fatherhood Network, and so it wasn't until I read that I made the association. That this guy's been in my ecosystem for a long time. And so I'm glad to see you doing the work, in the great state of Colorado.
I've been on your tail for a long time too, man. So it's serendipity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we always start our show off, with a simple opening that you begin yourself. And we ask our guest to tell us your daddy story.
Oh, wow. Well, that's where it all started, because I had no idea that I'd be doing the work that I've been doing for the last 25 plus years, and it all stemmed from my relationship or lack of relationship with my own father. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. A single mom who raised 3 sons on her own. I'm the youngest of 3, and my father and mother divorced when I was 2 years old, and my father, just pretty much was not engaged, was not available. Growing up in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Brooklyn, New York, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and I have to commend my mom for getting us through that transition, and we survived it and got out of there, so to speak. But when I was a young adult, in my early 20s, I began to really try to reach out to my dad and connect with him and get to know who he was as not only my father, but as the man that he was. And it was a tough transition. My father was alcoholic. He abused drugs. He was a businessman, but he was functional in a sense, I guess. I wanted to get to know him. So it was more or less, who is this man that raised me? And, what is there does he have to offer me at this point? I'm still seeking validation from healthy males in my life that weren't very present. And I found different mentors and men who I picked up different things along the way to help mold me and shape me into the man I am today. But once I got a chance to get to know my father, it was kind of like he was more of a friend, at that point. And I kind of hung out with him and in his circle, which was an unhealthy circle. And I got entrapped in and got exposed to hard drugs at that time. My father had abusing crack cocaine at that time, and
Mm.
and I was introduced to that in his circle. And 3 years later, I'll give you the short version. 3 years later, I found myself in a drug rehab program
Mm.
and spent 18 months in there recovering from drug addictions to crack cocaine. And
Mm.
thank God to today, I'm blessed, man. I am 35 years. I'm sorry, 35 years drug free. And
Congratulations. Nice.
thank
Awesome.
you, thank you. Yes, and it was one of those things where I was like, wow, I didn't realize that my life was going to take that kind of turn. But you know, fast forward 5 years into my sobriety, I had a conversation with my father in his home, and we were talking, and he walks up to me, and I'm in my recovery, and he kisses me on my forehead and says, "I love you."
Hmm.
And
Wow.
I was 30 years old at that time, and I'm like, what is this? And we didn't
Mm.
speak on it. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. We went back to doing what we were doing. And 3 months later, he passed away.
Wow.
And we didn't know he was sick. He had cardiovascular disease. But the impact for me was like, wow, I finally connected with the man, who gave birth to me. And now he was taken away from me.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so it was like it was a validation. It was bittersweet. It was, I call it the first and the last kiss because that was the first time that my father ever kissed me, and it was the last time. And so when I started doing this work, that was in New York City. So
Mm.
a year later, I moved to Denver, Colorado, and my father came to me in spirit and told me to leave told me it was time to leave New York.
Mm.
It was time to get out. It was time to get out of there.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a dream. I was wide awake. I heard him and I felt him. And I moved here and I vowed that going forward that I was never going to let this type of thing happen uh, to my children going forward. That they would never have to long for my love and feeling my love and my passion and feeling my lips on their face and feeling me embrace them because I longed for it and it was something that was missing. I didn't realize that I finally got the validation that I needed from my father, but it was also taken away from me. So it was kind of like getting the monkey off your back, but it was also
Mhm.
like, wow. But I said, no child should have to go through this,
Absolutely.
and we
Yeah.
need to make sure that fathers understand that it's okay to love on your children,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I had two daughters previously before I moved to Colorado. But when I moved to Colorado, I had three sons, and from day one, from the moment they came out the womb, I was there for them. I kissed and hugged and loved on them all the way to this day. Now they're 22 and 20 years old. Twins are 20 years old, and even to this day, they always say, "Dad, why did you kiss and hug on us so much?" I said, because I didn't have that, and I don't want you to
Mhm.
ever have to long for wanting that from me. And
Yeah.
so now I see them doing it to their children. Two of my sons have babies, and I watch them kissing and hugging and telling their children that they love them. And it was just like, okay, I broke that cycle. I broke that
Mhm.
cycle. They got it. So
Yeah, let's go back to these Brooklyn streets for a minute, because I was born and raised in Crown Heights, PS 221. Winthrop Junior High School and attended Erasmus Hall. What was your journey in Brooklyn?
man, IS 320. That was in Crown Heights, across the street from Ebbets Field.
I Yeah, I know.
And then I went to high school at George Westinghouse.
Okay. Okay.
downtown Brooklyn.
I know I felt some kindred spirits in here somewhere. I'm actually writing a book now, and just yesterday was writing on a narrative about Brooklyn, New York, and talking
Mhm,
about how Brooklyn um, frames you. It doesn't nurture you; it prepares you. And I'm often, intrigued by people that I meet who have left New York, gone somewhere else to do great things. There's a real weird, eerie way that I think God uses the
mhm,
city of New York to cultivate people with storied pasts
mhm,
and begin to put them in positions to go out into the marketplace and or into the world to do great things. And I know it probably happens in other places, but it's something really, really unique about New York. I went to a Knicks game here in Atlanta a week or so ago, and there were more Knicks fans in that arena than Atlanta Hawks fans. And that typically happens when you go to anything up and down the East Coast, but it
right.
does speak to how New Yorkers just move and they are around the space. But how did you pick Denver?
Well, my oldest brother, my late oldest brother, Dr. Abba Yomi Meeks, he was the first doctor of Chinese acupuncture in the state of Colorado, and
Wow.
he ran a nonprofit organization called Moyo Nguvu Cultural Arts Center, and they had a rites of passage program, and he taught Tai Chi and African drums, and he said, Dwayne, come on out here and hang out with me till you get on your feet and and make your transition. And so he was my vehicle to getting to Colorado. Um, and I moved out here, got on my feet, and immediately dived into community to get the temperature of what were the issues, what were the challenges, what was happening there, was there the same things that were happening in New York happening in Colorado
Mm,
around fathers, men, and boys in our community. And the hoods are different. There are hoods everywhere. They just look different, So that my thing was when I first got here, I was like, well, take me to the hood, show me what the hood looks like. And when I saw the hood, it didn't look nothing like Brooklyn. So I was like,
mhm.
oh, wow, okay, this is different, But
Yeah.
the look was different, but the challenges were similar.
Right, 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 right.
And
Yeah, when I came to Denver, when I was just there, was introduced to one of your folks, and I said, "Yeah, let him know." I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot he was here." I was like, "I got to come to the spot." I said, "Y'all got to bring me to the hood. I got to come there," and you weren't available. And I said, "That's all right." He was so disappointed. I said, "We'll be back." I was like, "I'll be back." I said, to check out Denver to see what's going on, over here in this spot because it is to your point like many places we go. And I think that's also, it may not be, but I've only seen New Yorkers do that. Like I cannot go into a city without saying I need to go to the hood. I need to go and see where our people are living and see what they're living like and what
right,
they're looking like. And to your point, it may look the same. It may not look the same, but it is the same in many, 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 many ways. So, talk to me a little bit about the other side of your daddy story because you got six. So, how do you balance that? How do you balance the work that you're doing, with these fathers and men and raising your own children? Or are they all out the house now?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're all out the house now. Everybody's grown. Everybody's doing their thing, and I realized that my role has changed
Mm,
because I always say that fatherhood is a role that we step into, but is not who you are. So I'm realizing that when I was a provider, and now I'm in the advisor space,
mm,
no longer providing for them in that financial capacity, but I'm also providing support, just emotional support. But I'm really truly an advisor because now everything that they have been exposed to and taught is time to put into application, and I'm here to reflect and to bounce things off of, and that relationship kind of changes. You're still not your child's friend, but the relationship is now you understand what I have been saying all these years, and I have been trying to prepare you for, because it's like sending your child out into the wilderness without the tools for survival. And we want to make sure that they're only going to be children for so long, and then they're going to have to get out there and they're going to have to test the waters and learn those kind of things. But if they don't have any a model or someone to bounce things off of, they tend to struggle. So I've always been encouraged just to say that the door is always open. The door never closes. You're always welcome back. I'm always here for you. I'm just a phone call away. That relationship, the consistency of that relationship, and it's funny because I didn't have that growing up. So people say, well, how did you learn all these things if you didn't have a dad who taught you these things? And I said, well, the lesson that I learned was that I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew how I wanted to show up for my children. And for many years, I held my dad hostage because of how he didn't show up in my life. And I would be doing speaking engagements, and I would be talking. I'd be saying, you know what? I'm still healing from that.
Right.
And
Right.
I said I gotta let that go, because as I did research on my father's history, and I realized that my father wasn't raised by his father,
Mm-hmm.
and his father wasn't raised by his father.
Mm-hmm.
My father was raised by his oldest brother in the country in Middlesex, North Carolina. And so I realized that, oh, okay, he only was able to show up to the capacity of what he knew. He didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
tools, so how could he give me the tools if he didn't have the tools? So he did the best that he could with what he had. And I said, okay,
Right.
I have to let that go, because those are those cards that I were dealt, and those are the circumstances, but that does not dictate my future and how I show up as a father for my family. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the biggest lesson I think I learned in talking to men and practicing forgiveness and letting go and acknowledging the pain, reflecting on it, and then transforming that pain and getting a win out of it. Taking your mess and turning it into your message. So I've been able to do that in a very inspiring way. My sharing my story, lifting men up and activating them in the space where, hey, we need to be able to have a safe space where we can unpack that stuff with each other and be
Absolutely.
vulnerable, transparent. Let's get naked. Let's talk about the real stuff instead of the surface stuff that we normally talk about as men when we get together and we're talking trash. Let's talk about have real conversations, and cast a
Mm-hmm.
vision for what fatherhood looks like, in our families, in our country, um,
Mm-hmm.
in a space where fathers are devalued and emasculated many times. So where do we find the strength within each other and to support each other? Because we suffer in silence,
Mm-hmm.
many times, and that's where the mental health issues come in. This we holding it in and not sharing it, and two, we implode,
Mm-hmm.
internally, and then we explode externally, and we do a lot more damage than good.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about the work at Urban Colors Arts and Mentoring.
Urban Colors Arts Meeting was started back in 2007. Currently, we're going through an entire rebranding of the vision for it. Is just evolved, and it started out as a community-based nonprofit organization focused on supporting fathers and youth, and we became connectors in the community. I was able to really plug in and connect with community organizations, other state level agencies, and and gain access to resources that fathers needed.
Mm-hmm.
And we became a resource. And the really cool thing was that we had gotten a grant back then through Human Services, and for a few years, and we didn't have a brick and mortar place to have our program, so we set up shop in the rec centers where dads frequent. They come there to work out. They come there to play basketball. Come to hang out. So we set up shop in one of the rooms there and have our classes there. But we also would bring resources. We would bring refreshments for dads, and then we would just hang out with them and have conversations with them, and then invite them into our space. Because without a relationship, you're not going to make any progress. So our focus was on connecting with dads authentically in the space and building a relationship and inviting them in to offer support.
Have you found that there's a struggle between the two missions? One is providing support and services for fathers, and then the other providing support and services for youth? Because sometimes those things, community get those confused sometimes when it comes to fatherhood programs. And I think even some folks who create fatherhood programs confuses it in the space where people on the outside looking in think that because you're working with fathers that you're actually cultivating mentors to be mentors, where you may just solely, like Fathers Incorporated, I am solely focused on building the capacity of fathers to be the best fathers that they can be. Now, if they choose to be a mentor, that's on them, but that's not part of our programmatic structure. And so, but when you begin to start doing that, it confuses the public as to whether or not you are a service for fathers or a service for youth. Have you struggled with both of your capacities in getting people to understand exactly what it was exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish?
Yes, yes, we have. Yes, yes, and no. I had a lady actually recently, and she had looked up and she saw the fatherhood program, and she was looking for mentorship for her son. And she's like, well, it says fatherhood, fatherhood, more fatherhood stuff than youth oriented programs. And I told her, I said, well, your son, he's going to be a man one day. He's going to probably be a father one day. So I mean, equipping young men with the tools that they need to prepare them again to go out into society is helping them to cope with um, their feelings, their emotions, and understanding that it's a process as well. I mean, children are men, particularly are wherever they're at, it's developmentally appropriate, and
Mhm.
I use the metaphor saying that when boys are young, we give them sports equipment, footballs, basketballs, toolboxes, and we encourage them to build to build things, to be active, to showcase your strength. And girls are when they're young, they're given doll houses, they're given um, Susie Baker kits, and all the things that that attribute to being nurturing
Mhm.
as young girls from they're born. They get the doll babies. Boys, we get the hammers. We get the football equipment. So girls are being equipped to start families at a young
Mhm.
age, and men, we're not. We're playing catch up because we're not brought up in that type of environment to say, okay, you prepare to have a family and prepare to be nurturing and loving. We're taught to be providers from a young age. This is what a man is supposed to do. He's supposed to
Oh, yeah.
provide for your family, protect your family, and those things. And those things are okay, but when a young man grows up and he gets out there and he has a child at a young age and he's still not developmentally appropriate, and mentally, he
Mhm.
struggles with how he's supposed to show up and be a father to a baby when he's still pretty much a baby as,
Absolutely.
as well. So they do connect, um, and I think just young men they need to see it. They
Mhm.
need to see it in order for them to believe it. The media has so many negative stereotypes out there about what men are supposed to be, but we have to combat that with the positive and say that it's okay for men to be nurturing and loving, of course, and also be a provider, and being able to balance that is part of working together as part of family foundation and family cohesion. You
Mhm.
know, it's both
Mhm.
parents bring a set of tools and expertise to the family, and you can't do what with one without the other.
Yeah, I do think that there needs to be some more exploration, or updated exploration in this whole notion of boys to men, right? Because I think we've kind of lost our um, ability to see what true rites of passage looks like for boys to men. It used to be an old school notion of what it was, but I think a newer school notion of what it is unharnessed right now. Some of the things that you talked about that we would like to see cultivated in our boys, like compassion and empathy and those kinds of things. There's still segments of the population, both men and women, who view those things as soft, right? And not equipping them for the things that they should be equipped for. And then when you lace on top of that, or layer on top of that, race, particularly for black and brown boys, there are things that they need to be trained for or raised up in that aren't boy like things. They are man like things because they need to have that information in their buckets to be able to transition safely from being a boy to a man. So there's this kind of like really weird thing going on when it comes to boys of color, when it comes to rites of passage, because it's unclear these days what's true rites of passage for our boys and what does it look like to. So to your point, many times in our programs, you and I are working with what appears to be a man, but when they sit down in front of us, that's not what's represented. What's represented is that boy that is unnurtured.
Right, unnurtured and unhealed.
Mm.
Because whatever's not healed is going to be passed down. For at least 3 generations. So
Hmm.
if you're aware of those things and the cycles that need to be broken, you can start taking those steps to seeking, mentorship and programs that support moving past that, healing your own trauma, because you're bringing that into a new family, and you're bringing all that baggage with you. And then
Hmm.
she's got baggage and she's bringing that baggage, and then you decide, oh, we're gonna make a baby. We're gonna bring somebody else into the world and share all that baggage with them. You know, so I think it's important for fathers, for men who are thinking about having a family, or are in the process of having a family, to really be involved from the beginning, because I had done some research recently and said neurologically, the benefits neurologically for men are that when they become fathers, it changes them,
Hmm.
and it changes them, and makes, they become more empathetic, more nurturing, more supportive, and you know, but why are we not preparing men in this space, and pointing that out, you know.
Hmm.
Also, they're getting them involved in maternal care and prenatal care in the early stages, even before the child is born, produces better outcomes. Having dad involved even before the birth of the child, just through that process, so he can connect and identify in those nurturing spaces to be supportive to the mom, and be there when the child is born. So in Colorado, there's a shift now of getting parents, particularly fathers, more involved in prenatal care,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that connection, um, uh, dad being there when being the first one to touch his child when the child was born, the first one to cut that umbilical cord. For him, neurologically, it creates a deeper connection,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. It was speaking on, those that transition for me, because that's the theme of what we're talking about right now, which is what is occurring in the transition, what's occurring as a result of the transition. I was on a panel, or not on a panel, I was actually at an event with Dr. Brandon Frame, who is the CEO of Black men can. And he was being interviewed, and I've shared this with a couple of people because it opened my eyes up about a thing, and I want to share it with you to see what you think about it. And the moderator asked Dr. Frame like what he thought of the Frederick Douglass quote, "It's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men." And he said, "I actually do not like that quote." And I
Mm.
was like, whoa, it threw me back because I'm like, we always use that quote.
Yeah.
And he says, "I actually do not like that quote." And he said, "Why?" He says, "Well, because what the connotation that it gives off is that we are willing to build strong children, but we're also willing to leave men broken."
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, never ever saw it that way
Mm.
before.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I know what the intent was. I know what it says, but in reality, in seeing it play itself out, we have become willing to let men be broken
Mm-hmm.
for the sake." And that is in the essence of why I struggle with the fatherhood thing and the mentoring thing.
Mm-hmm.
That everybody always wants you to do the mentoring thing because it's honorable and admirable to work with children, and it's not so much working with men
Mm-hmm.
because everybody believes that whatever a man is going through is his fault,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't need any help. He should be able to pull himself up by his
Right.
bootstraps and do whatever he's going through right now is his fault.
Right.
And why should I waste time in helping him resolve whatever his issues, are? And even with those issues, it still shouldn't stop him from being able to get a job,
Right.
right? Pay
Mm-hmm.
child support,
Mm-hmm.
pick up his children, support the women in his life,
Yes.
overcome obstacles, get around grief, right? All of those
Mm.
kinds of things and still be mentally stable at the end of the day.
Right. Yes.
And I think that's a deeper conversation that we have to kind of have from that very simple principle about leaving men broken. That we have to begin to start analyzing what is the consequence of leaving men broken.
Mm. Mm. That's powerful. Yeah, I've actually used that quote numerous times as well. So to hear that, I'm like, okay, and how you present it is like, okay, that makes sense because
Hmm.
in talking with men and working with men, I've sat with men in groups where they felt so safe in the space that they were able to unpack and go back to see what transpired, what changed them, and what changed the trajectory of their lives and the decisions that they made. Whether they were abusing drugs or they got into an unhealthy relationship, found themselves incarcerated. It's when do they have a chance to uh, unpack and
Mm.
walk through that, have a clarity session and walk through that transition. Do you know when this change happened? I had one guy tell me once
Mm.
before, he's like, man, the first time I've cried, I'm 40 something years old. I haven't cried in 15 years. We had
Mm.
gotten in touch with some stuff that he was dealing with his with his father, who was
Mhm.
abusive to him, and he told me the age that he started using drugs, and it had been uh, 15, 20 years, from when he started doing that to when he was able to cry and
Mm.
realize, I'm sober now and I've so much has happened to me. And I said, well, how long have you, been doing drugs? And he said 15, 20 years. And he's like, I haven't cried since before that. So you've been walking around for 15, 20 years with all this bottled up inside of you and no place to unpack it.
Mm.
But you found yourself incarcerated. You've been in domestic violence relationships. You've had all this trauma, and it goes back to his father, and then him using the drugs and the alcohol to mask the pain. So
Right.
So you stop developing at that age. Whatever you started doing drugs, you start developing mentally,
Right.
and
Right.
you haven't grown. And now that you're sober and you're clean, you're coming back to who you truly are,
Mm-hmm.
minus the drugs. But you had you carried all that, and then you had children along the way as well. So you weren't showing up as the best version of of yourself. So,
Mm-hmm.
but there are programs. There are not enough programs, rather, that give men that space or allow men to be able to have elevated conversations, around unpacking their history, because we all have a story, and our
Mm-hmm.
story shapes us. So, what is your story? And this just because something negative happened, it's your mess. But how can you flip that and turn that into a powerful testimony of resilience and strength and fortitude, and then give that to your family, to say that, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
went through these things, but I overcame them, and it has just built resilience and strength in me, but a lot of times we don't want to talk about it because we've been meant to feel shamed because of like
Yeah.
you said, the things that we experience, and blame. So how can you talk about it if the people around you are blaming you and saying and pointing the fingers? Like, no, those were learning experiences, and
Right.
now I can give that to my family, and I talk openly and honestly with my children. They know my history, they know my
Mm-hmm.
past, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the best gift I can give to them, because fatherhood again is a role, and a lot of times we don't know the man behind the father. The man,
Absolutely.
the man is the man. The father is the role. Well, who was the man before he was the father?
Mm-hmm.
And is getting to know your dad, your parents like that. My mother's 87 years old, and that's my mother, but I'm always asking her about her past, her history. How did she
Mm-hmm.
grow up? What did she go through? The relationships that she went through, and she's taking me back, and I'm recording stuff, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
how
yeah.
she just shaped her to the woman that she is today.
Hmm.
She's,
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about doing that with my mom. She's 84. And so I had this, I was writing something the other day and I was writing about her and I thought very quickly how much I don't know about her because I never asked those kinds of questions. And I need to make sure that that happens while she can still articulate, her life,
yeah,
to me,
man.
right? So now you find yourself as the manager of the Colorado Fatherhood Network, in Denver, Colorado. Talk to us about that journey and the work of the network.
Well, the Colorado Fatherhood Network is a father-focused statewide systems-level practitioner network for those supporting fathers and families. And
Mhm.
we on an organizational, community, and a system level. So we do this by holding um, regional forums throughout the state of Colorado, providing best practices and technical assistance to the practitioners who are actually doing the work.
Mhm.
So it's really interesting because Urban Colors, I'm doing direct services, right? And then the network, I'm working with the practitioners on the other side, and
Mhm.
realizing that the practitioners are doing the work. So we need to prepare the practitioners to engage and to activate fathers.
Mhm.
That's been a struggle here because we're in a female dominant industry still. We still have women who are running fatherhood programs, and sometimes women are running fatherhood programs who are not even parents, So there is a place for women in fatherhood, where we should be able to work together, to show different perspectives. Because I love having women come in and sharing this side where I can't answer certain questions that men have. Like, well, let's ask the ladies. Let's ask them.
Mhm.
How they see it. And so through the network, it just gives an opportunity to provide uh, multiple webinars throughout the year, every quarter, and where we bring in a speaker to talk about the landscape of fatherhood in Colorado and nationally,
Mhm.
and to offer advice. And those still speakers come in from different sectors. We've had legal guardians at Leiden come in and speak. We've had superintendents from public schools, districts come in and speak. And then we also have kind of peer-to-peer session learning where we actually are just having general conversations about supporting. We're talking about collaboration. Because my thing is, if we're not talking, then we're not collaborating. Everybody is working in their own silos, and we're not coming together to share resources like we should be, connecting the dots, really showing a true value, because that's how you start a movement. The collaboration, the sharing of important data, what's working and what's not working. But most of all, it's um, the recruitment of those dads, finding those dads, retaining those dads, and then sustaining those dads, meaning walking with those dads through the process. Not just a 12-week session, then you give a guy a certificate and you say, congratulations. That's that's foundational work. A lot of programs get stuck in doing just foundational work. They're
Mm-hmm.
not. They are having struggles moving through the continuum of learning and having more quality, high impact results in programming. Meaning walking with those dads, helping them to overcome those barriers, and that may take a year plus time. But
Right.
are we staying with those dads where we can see the long term impact of of our our work with them, and being a resource to them. So I think that's where a lot of times I see programs stopping, and they say, well, we just do this 12 sessions, they get a certificate, and they have a you know um, they have a pizza party, and we say, say thanks,
Go off and be great. Go
because
off
there's
and be
no there's
great.
no money in the budget to do anything else, right? So you got to be really
Right.
super creative, but
Yeah, yeah.
activate those men that go through the program and make them become ambassadors. So they're
Absolutely.
out in community, and they're talking about what they went through, and they go back to their communities, and maybe they start a program in their community, you know,
Yeah.
um, and activate those guys. And then they come back to you for additional training, those kind of things. So those are some of the things that we're trying to create here at the Colorado Fatherhood Network. Um,
hmm
there's
What's the uniqueness of the dads in Denver? Because it's oftentimes when you're talking about fatherhood in the spaces, if everybody believes that it's a issue in a huge urban center, right? No one looks at Denver, Boise, Salt Lake City, those kinds of places. What are the uniquenesses, if there are any?
the uniquenesses are, we have urban neighborhoods, we have suburban, and we have rural neighborhoods. Each of
Mm,
those neighborhoods have a unique set of barriers and circumstances and challenges that have to be met. So, in the rural areas, the issue there is access, of course, um, technical assistance, and because they're so far out, is reaching them and connecting with them, activating them in their own community. And those men that work in that live in those rural areas that have families, yes, they believe that their job is just to provide for their family financially, make sure food is on the table. They don't have a lot of time to participate in other activities, but they have a lot of valuable information on just their roles, what they believe their roles, how they were raised, and traditionally. So, we're looking to support more rural communities, because Denver gets a lot of where we're based out of is very heavy. Denver and Aurora around programming, but it's the programs that are hard to reach, that are further out, that we focus on. And in 2025, that's our primary focus. Really, is to reach those rural communities. Um, they have human service agencies there, so we have partnered with them to bring technical assistance to their practitioners, to help them really develop a program that is welcoming to dads and creates a safe space, and welcomes their voices into those spaces, and then value them. you know um, and I also believe when you are welcoming voices into those kind of spaces, a lived experience space, and you are asking for something from families to share their voice and their experience, you need to find a way to compensate them as well for their lived experience, whether it's a gift card or something, because we're taking that information and then we're using it to create better programs or more tailored programs. Rural communities programs need to be tailored specifically to their needs. And I've always been a preacher of one size doesn't fit all when it comes to fatherhood programming. So, you can't take one program and say, okay, we're going to fit this in here, and we're going to fit it over there, without understanding the demographics of who you're trying to reach. So, tailoring those programs to those, having conversations with those communities, find out what their needs are, and then tailor your programs to that. You can always pull out something out of a curriculum, but it needs to be tailored because Colorado is very diverse, and what
I was just getting
yeah.
ready to ask you that. I was getting ready to say, you guys are extremely diverse too. You got it all. You got indigenous tribes, you got Latinos, Hispanics, you got blacks, you got whites, you got it all. Where does that add, to the uniqueness of the services you're trying to provide?
We did a presentation at the Strengthening Families Conference this past September, and I facilitated a panel, and I got the idea from your Fatherhood Summit
Mm.
when you did your fireside
It's all good. It's all
fireside
good.
chat. And I came
Yeah.
back and I had shared it with our staff, and I was like, "Oh, we need to do that here." So, we had five men, fathers from actually different ethnic backgrounds.
Mm.
We had a Hispanic, we had indigenous father, we had a African American father, we had two Caucasian guys. I did have an African guy, but he backed out at the last minute. But we were just trying to have this diverse
Yeah.
perspective, and I just asked them questions about their roles and responsibilities. And I prepped them before, and I said, "You're going to be talking to an audience of practitioners mainly, the social workers and people who've been doing this work. And please," I asked that the best thing you can do is give it to them uncut,
Right.
and don't sugarcoat nothing, because that's the only way we're going to create change, in the system, is for them to understand how they need to connect with you, and
Mhm.
that your needs are unique to you, and you want to be with your family, you want to connect, and and support your family, and be the best father that you can be. And those guys, they got a standing ovation for the
Mhm.
for that session. And
Nice.
those guys said, "Dwayne, man," he said, "this was the first time ever that I felt like my voice was heard."
Mhm.
He's like, "I
Yeah.
never had an opportunity like this before." He's like, "This just inspired me and just gave me so much energy and enthusiasm, and just it motivated us." Like, this was amazing, And
Mhm.
I'm still in contact with those guys, and following up with them and see how they're doing, and trying to create some other spaces for us to get together to continue doing this. I'm like, this is only the beginning, guys. We need to keep the ball rolling here because you guys did the work. I
Yeah.
just asked you questions. I just asked you to tell them who you are and how you feel and what it is to be a father, and the triumphs and your challenges. And it was powerful, man. It was very powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of people see the work that we do, around the country, and their brothers and sisters on the outside that want to do the same thing for their communities. But the network is not really set up to cultivate new leaders. We got to think more about how we do that, but less about the work itself and more about the infrastructure. That's kind of where I am right now. It's
Mm,
like the infrastructure of what you're trying to do
mm,
matters in
yes.
this work because you have to have an infrastructure to do the level of comprehensive work that's needed
Mm,
for the fathers that you're looking to serve. It's a great thing to kind of sit around in a support group or sit around on a Zoom meeting and have everybody talk about their problems,
mm,
but the real rubber hits the road when that Zoom call is over, and you can actually help those individuals with the things that they need, as opposed to we see you next week where we can share our problems all over again and
Right.
continue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I get phone calls and emails and texts all the time, and I'm sure you get them where folks are saying, "Hey, man, I want to sit down with you for an hour and talk about." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't have time to sit down and talk about what I'm doing and how I'm doing. I got too
Mm-hmm.
much work in front of me and too many
Mm-hmm.
people I'm trying to save today."
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been telling the people is like, listen, go to my podcast, man. I interview brothers and sisters all around this country who do this work, and they all share how they do this work and the difficulty in doing this work, along with the joy in doing this work. If you had a piece of advice for someone who was looking to get into this work on whatever scale, a small scale, medium scale, a large scale, what would you advise them to do before they even start?
Um, I would ask them what does your heart tell you?
Mhm.
What does fatherhood, does it, when you say fatherhood, does it draw you in, or does it, do you hesitate? When you talk about fatherhood, because we bring different biases to it, and I always say, this work is not for the faint of heart. If you are looking just to collect a check, you know, go somewhere else, because there are lives at stake here, and I take this work very seriously, and let me change that. I take this calling very seriously, because
Mhm.
for me it was a calling. I had no idea I was going to do this work, and I was only able to do this work based on bringing my own past history into the space, because I
Mhm.
have lived experience, and I've been down the road, and I can connect and I can identify with dads. This is not coming from a textbook. I'm not reading the book and then spitting out what I read in the textbook or in a classroom. This is real, and this is how, if we want fathers to be able to show up in powerful ways for their family and keep their families together, then we have to be real and honest with them. And you can learn by getting involved and volunteering and getting the experience and talking to fathers. If you're going to be working in, you can't go into a field and not talk to the people that you plan on serving, and
Mhm.
just sit back in the office and say, I'm just going to create a curriculum and then I'm just going to put it out there. Have you talked? How many dads have you talked to?
Mhm.
So you have to do the upfront work, as well. It's forever evolving. I'm constantly, like yourself, thinking of new and creative ways to connect with dads, or connect with sectors, and invite dads' voices where their voices have not been heard before. You know,
Mhm.
um, and I thank God that I've been in the space to be able to do this on this platform, and have kind of become a voice for our fatherhood movement in Colorado.
Mhm.
And like you said, the calls keep coming in, and people want to talk to you, and then they want to pick your brain. And you show up high, authentically. Be
Mhm.
genuine. It was a calling to me. Deion Sanders once before said, God called me collect, and I accepted the charges. I'm like, I use that all the time. You had to accept it, because once
Yeah.
I found my purpose and I accepted it, everything started happening the way it was supposed to, started falling into alignment. That's how you know
Mm.
that you are on purpose, in your personal journey. It's not for everybody. Fatherhood is not for everybody. I understand it,
Mhm.
but don't play around with it. Don't play around with
Yeah.
it. I mean, we are losing our families. Families are being dismantled, globally, and if you're not committed, fully committed to it, don't step into it, because yeah, we got
Yeah.
work to do.
Man, Dwayne, it's such a pleasure talking to you. I gotta voice one disappointment I had when I came to Denver,
Uh oh.
and it wasn't a disappointment of the Denver. It was a disappointment of me. I had no idea how close I was to Boulder, and there was a game the next day before I was leaving, And if I knew that there was a game the next day, I would have certainly stayed so that I could go up there and support that man and the work that he's doing at Colorado State. How has he changed the energy in the area?
Oh my God! Oh boy! I mean, Colorado is in full support of Dion, and he's an amazing father. He's an amazing coach, and these men, he's transforming these men. Not just the African American men, it's all men. All the men who are on his staff, all the young men that are on his team, feel that connection and that support. He wants to see them be successful, not just in football, but in life. And I really like that about him. It's not all about football. Teaches you about life, but everyone's not going to make it to the next level. So he's preparing those men. Many of those young men don't have not had fathers in their lives. And for those who have, he's a bonus dad.
Yeah.
And you operate from where you're called to. He's always said it's not about the location, it's about the destination. And for however long he stays in Colorado, wherever he goes, he understands that it's bigger than him, and it's not just about Colorado, but is where you're called to go. And what you're listening for. It'd be great if you stayed here, but I also realize that, I've been told a number of times, that it's bigger than Colorado. What you're doing is bigger than Colorado. So you don't want to get stuck in a place where that your message is global,
Absolutely.
and so it's like, yeah, you're right. Because that was the mentality I had when I was in New York. I never thought I was going to leave New York. I thought I was going to be stuck there the rest of my life.
Isn't it kind of crazy that you think that, though, as big as everybody says New York is this mentality that you can't get stuck there?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that there is a ceiling, right? There is a ceiling to what you can do and what you can accomplish in a place like New York City. That's why I'm here in Atlanta, because of the very reason, the ceiling wasn't high enough for me.
Yeah.
And God made that clear that no, for the work that I need you to do, we need to remove your ceiling. And the way that I remove that ceiling is I need you to be more than just Kenny from the block, because that's how they see you, right?
Yeah.
That's how they see you. And I need for you to go somewhere so that I can redesign who you are in a way that people respect, know you, and understand what your calling is based on the work that you present in front of you, not where you came from, which is what people do, which is why you're never a prophet in your own land. Right. Yeah.
But
So all of that, bro.
God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the called.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Amen, brother. Listen, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, how they can support you, how they can find out more about what you're doing there in the great state of Colorado.
Well, I can be reached at the Colorado Family Resource Center Association. My email is dmeeks@cofamilycenters.org. Yeah, and again, Urban Colors is going through a transformation and rebranding. So, I can be reached at the Family Resource Center, and we'd love to hear from you, and and be supportive. I'm at your service. So, whatever's needed, man, I try to be there.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. I appreciate you. And as my bishop always says to me, I love you, and there ain't nothing you could do about that. And to all of my I Am Dad podcast listeners, thanks for joining us on another I Am Dad podcast. You know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And that's my good friend and mentor, Art Mitchell, used to always say to me, it's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice. Until next Sunday, God bless and peace out.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am Dad, period.
You know what it is. Everything I do, yeah, I do it big. Yeah, screaming at